Well, this is the setup. We have some kind of an ocean. I think it's Indian Ocean. No, wait, maybe it's Pacific. So we have some body of water over here. We have $1 million crane over here. 45 tons Liebherr SWL hook beam, 45 tons, SWL spreader, 40.6 tons, manufactured 1990. So that's why I'm parked like this, a bit away, so in case it crumbles from old age, I'm safe. But actually, if it crumbles, it's pretty tall. Anyway, I'm all ready. I'm all hooked up. The Jeep is the neck is flipped. That you see that container forklift, the huge one. It was so easy for him to flip the neck like a piece of cake because his boom goes so high. I just dropped the trailer. He went like in the front, flipped the neck, and he unloaded the Jeep. And then of course I hooked up to the Jeep, hooked up hydraulics, and tried to lift the trailer, and nothing happened. I see hydraulic fluid. Actually, I'm using transmission fluid. I see transmission fluid, I mean hydraulic oil, whatever, is spraying somewhere. I went in to investigate. Turns out the quick connect at the one of them at the trailer just snapped open. And before that valve closed, because there's so much pressure, sometimes, it's not good when you start your PTO and then increase the RPM right away to like 850, 900. Especially when you're hooking for the first time, like to the new trailer and new Jeep. Like it's better just to hook up to start the PTO with that button, but keep the RPM idle and just go and see if everything is okay. Because if you increase the RPM, that increases the pressure, and something in a case like this, boom, there's a big leak. Of course it's supposed to close, but probably there was some dirt in that valve that's supposed to close. But anyway, I killed the PTO, plugged it back in, made sure it's firmly seated, everything is cool, and tried to change the shims between the booster and the trailer, and I had only 2, right? I have to put 3, like this thick, 3 huge pieces from Excel Welding, Alberta. Alberta represent. And yeah, those shims work like magic, except it takes forever to tighten those bolts, because they're that special nut, that anti-nuclear armament space age nut. You cannot do it with your fingers. Right from like thread 3, you have to use the wrench. It's very tight. But the good thing is that it cannot get undone. But anyway, so they left me here. I did everything. I got all my chains out. And the guy in the pickup truck comes over and he says, and by the way, that track over there, that's what's sitting on that, you see in the middle of the frame. To the right, you see a forklift. And that guy just brought some straps. And in the middle of the frame, between the small forklift and the big forklift, there's like a special trailer, one of those... it's like pretty much like a small container without walls, right? I think that's how it came. That's how it was stored on the ship. Oh yeah, actually the guy drove it. It has wheels on the back, so the guy drove it. So maybe they, yeah, you see like that guy over there, like a shunt truck with 1 axle, 1.5 axles on the back. I'm not sure how he drove it, but somehow he dragged it over here. So at first they said 98,000 pounds, then the paperwork says 89,000. So I'm guessing it's 90,000. And so then I said, oh, okay, so what are we doing? And they said, well, the crane, it's a trade union, so the crane has a coffee break. And I said, wait, I thought it was beer. They don't have a beer break anymore? He says, yeah, that was, the guy, like without any smile on his face, he says, yeah, that was a long time ago. He says, now it's just coffee. I said, oh, okay. So trade union. But I don't see the guy over there. Maybe he's just sitting there. Because I think, it's so far to climb up and then down. There's no elevator, right? You have to go up those stairs, 90 degree, fight the gravity. I think they take all their food with them, and oh yeah, he's sitting there. He's sitting there probably playing video games or sending messages on his phone. Hey, look at this jerk in the black truck. Unbelievable. Truckers. Yeah, okay. But anyway, so the plan is, they said they're going to lift it and they're going to load me right there. So this crane will be the loading unit. And the guy came over in the pickup truck. He says, how are you going to load it? I said, what do you mean? He says, how long is your deck? I said, 26 feet. And he says, you know that track is 40 feet long. I said, well, technically it's 37.9, but who's counting? I said, that's why I have all these blocks in the back. I said, we're going to put the front right on the deck with no timbers, right next to the gooseneck, right? And the rear will be sitting at an angle above my bogies where the wheels are. And I said, my only concern is I got to make sure that the rear of the track clears my booster, you know, that those arms that go up and down just above the airbags, because I cannot afford for this machine to, you know, push in there. But I think that's why I don't want to use any timbers in the front. So I want to create like a big angle. So it's going to, this thing is going to be sitting like this, where this is near the gooseneck and this is the rear will be kind of like staring into the sky. And that's like, so that's the main issue. Oh, and I was able to change the shims. At first they didn't want to go in. And then I realized I was probably low on air because I dropped the trailer. And so I hooked up with the Jeep to the trailer, opened the airflow, and I dropped the air on the last 4 axles, and I dropped the air on the booster. And then I dropped the front of the trailer again down with hydraulics, so, and raised the rear, right, axle 2, right, as high as possible. I thought I would need to use some timbers, you know, I mean some boards under the wheels to raise it higher, because I need to open that gap between the trailer and the booster. No, as soon as I put the air in, when everything was connected, the rear went up, the gap became like this. So I put in 3 shims instead of 2 I used when I was empty, right? So, but 3, that's only when I'm loaded. Because if I leave it like that, this booster will be steering the trailer. Very dangerous. So so I got 3 shims, same as last time. I hope it's enough. And then I'll have just to adjust the airbags, the big airbags on the booster, make sure that all the axles are properly loaded. And so I did that. So I'm all ready. I got all the timbers. And because this thing will be sitting on the front of the trailer where my compartments for the chains are, you know, you have to take all the chains out. So I took all the chains out, all the binders out, they're all on the deck, and I moved all the timbers to the back. And actually, you see over there in the mirror, that's the ship. That's the ship that this thing came on. And the unloading containers, you see, oh wow, that's pretty cool. So the crane comes on these rails over here, and the boom sits right above the ship, and it has those special spreaders with chains, and I just grab those containers and just put them down. And the port guys said, they said there's so much stuff is coming off that ship, so they're super busy. And so I'm guessing that's why they left me alone. That guy finished with his coffee break a long time ago, but I see nobody's attaching those chains, those straps. I'm like, and where's the actual, where's the actual boom? Oh, it's high up. Okay, so because yeah, this one is basically designed like the boom is over there. It's designed like when the ship is here, he puts that boom down, and his whole cab where the operator is, like on that ship right now, I can see that the operator is actually, his cab is right above the ship, because it's like rails in there, right? And his cab goes, you know, pretty much all the way along the boom. Like, very cool. And that's how they unload them. And then I guess he's Yeah, he doesn't even have to turn. He doesn't even have to turn the boom. You know, the cab is right next to those big dollies with the chains, ropes, cables, right? Cables. And so when he's moving his cab, his big hook is moving, you know, and he just comes right on top of a container. So it's very easy for him to see, because actually he's very good visibility, because his floor is glass. Can you believe this? You're sitting there 20 stories high and your floor is made of glass, so I don't know, a bit scary, you know, so you see so far down below, but that allows them that visibility. So it's, and of course they have glass in the front, glass on the sides, you know, and the only thing they don't have glass on is the roof. But yeah, so they have 4 sides, bottom, front, left, right, it's all glass. Very cool. Actually, when I was a kid, at one point I had a fleeting dream to become a crane operator, believe it or not, because I always liked this machinery, you know, since I was a kid. A trucker or a railroad engineer, you know, piloting those trains, or a crane operator. Of course, well, everybody dreams of being a pilot or astronaut, but that's like not very realistic. You realize that pretty early on. But then crane operators, I think one thing I didn't like is that it's a bit scary. You're too high over there, right? And there's cases where these cranes fall over, right? And then you sit on your butt all the time, you know. I don't like that. At least like with trucking, I get to move. Like I've been here probably what, like 2 hours. You know, it's a lot of work. I lost count how many times I jumped in and out of the truck. So hooking the Jeep, you know, putting the pins in, moving the chains, moving binders. At least I have some, you know, physical exercise, you know. And so yeah, so I think it's better. I think trucking is better. So you get to see all these machines. You get to learn all this new technology, you know. So, oh, and the other issue, so right now the major headache is to load, make sure it's not squashing my my booster, and then of course emergency number 2, or like most important thing after that, once it's properly loaded, is securing it so that it doesn't fall off or shift. But then I have to find a place somewhere to park, because you know it was 1,100 miles. Deadhead, and I told them, I said, I don't want to order permits, because what if you cancel, you know, because I'm driving for 2.5 days pretty much. What if you cancel? I don't want to be out of all this money, you know, for permits and stuff like that. And plus, quite often the weight is wrong, the dimensions are wrong, you know. And so they said, okay, but we're not gonna pay you if you sit there waiting for permits. I said, nobody ever does. So permits are basically, it's non-refundable, like your waiting time for permits. And then I reached out to a Quebec permit broker I worked with before, and I said, hey, are you still with these with this permit company? He says, yeah. And I said, I'll need permits for Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Quebec. I said, I'm running with a Jeep and a booster. And he's like, oh boy. He says, that can take up to 10 days. I'm like, what? And that's the next issue I'll be dealing with. So after I'm loaded, after I'm everything is secured, and I have to find a place to park somewhere, they'll probably kick me out of the port. But like in Baltimore, I see all the time people just drop the loaded trailer, you know, because you know they don't allow people to stay here in the truck, but I think they allow like the load to stay here after it's loaded and secured. And because of, if I take the truck, there's a couple of truck stops, but they're pretty small, like west of here. But at least if I have a truck, you know, I can go somewhere, right? But with the trailer, I cannot go because I don't have a permit yet. And secondly, I'm 105 feet long. It's not that easy to find parking, like a truck stop with so much space. Like that one where I spent the night in Moncton, that one is on my list I'm gonna stop there for sure on the way back. Oh, and by the way, I was driving, so I drove almost 3 hours. Got up at 4 o'clock, 4:20, and started driving at 5 local time, which is 1 hour ahead of Eastern. So it's like, or back actually, or forward. So basically, it was here. It was 5 o'clock local. It was 4 in Toronto. So yeah, it's 1 o'clock, 1 hour forward, because we're east. This is Eastern Canada. And so yeah, I started driving, and not a single time I had no issues with codes or error messages. So I think I just got bad def somewhere. And also I was thinking about this, and I remember that at one point, I think probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, I went somewhere to top up my def, and as usual I unscrew the cap before I go inside. So, you know, then when they start the pump, you're pretty quick. You can grab the handle, the hose, and put it in. And so I opened that cap and I went inside, and something happened. I don't remember. Either the price was too high for some reason, or they didn't take my card. It was only like you had to have a special fuel card. Something was, I remember that I was not able to get that def. And I was kind of like a bit upset about this. And when I got into the truck, I forgot to put the cap on, and I drove maybe a couple of hours. And then at my next stop, at the next truck stop, I go out and I just take a look at the truck, you know, like usual, before you lock the doors. And I see, wait a second, I see my cap hanging loose on that string in there. And so I think that might have been the cause of this issue, because maybe maybe it was drizzling. I don't remember, you know, maybe some water got in, or maybe some dirt. And these sensors inside, they're very sensitive, as the word suggests, right? But I think there's something with the level sensor, the sensor that sends the information to the computer about how much def you have, you know, or maybe the doser, that thing that determines how much def to spray into the exhaust. Because actually, comparing this with the Mac I had much more problems with emissions, and the doser was the first thing to go, I think. And then I had a couple of codes, whereas on this truck, I think this is the first time where I have this emissions kind of like error message. I had another check engine light before, but there was something with some kind of a sensor on the engine. But overall, I can tell you that, you know, I've had this truck for 2 years now, right? March 7th, I took possession. March 7th, 2018. So March 2019 was 1 year, and March 2020 was 2 years. So actually March, April, May, June. So basically 2 years and 2 months. And that's only the only problem I've had so far, with same mileage. So definitely Kenworth is put together better than the Mac. And the Mac, I always had issues with that air sucking in after you shut down the truck, and the fuel was leaving the system, and then there was loss of power the next day unless you pump the fuel with the manual pump. And everybody says, you know, Macs and Volvos, they have this issue with like leaking injectors or something. Like the air comes in if the truck is parked and the fuel leaves the engine. So yeah, I don't know. Forget Macs. And so yeah, the permit broker says it might take up to 10 days to get the Nova Scotia permit. But he says, I don't know, it's all unpredictable. He says, the other day I ordered this also. The guy had a Jeep and the booster, and it came back after 1 day. And then he says, Quebec can be tricky too. Quebec can take a long time. And now he was even saying, hey, if you have a booster in the back, that's class 6. I have no idea what that is, but like that's a class 6 vehicle for Quebec. I might need a letter from the shipper, like probably a letter saying that why I need this. So anyway, and then I checked online resource. I did not check it before for some reason. This is the first time I do something real heavy out of here. Turns out Nova Scotia, Quebec, and New Brunswick, they all require escorts when you're like over 90 feet long, I think. And so I'll definitely be leaving a lot of money in these 3 provinces. Ontario, I have my annual permit, which covers me. And that's why I want to get to Ontario as fast as possible. Just not cut any, corners in Quebec, but just go even like make the miles in Quebec as few. I gotta use as few miles as possible in Quebec, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, just to get to Ontario. Because once I'm in Ontario, I don't need any escorts. I don't need any extra permits. I can just go, and we're gonna go around again on that Highway 11, 17, and then enter Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and that's where I will need 2 permits. But again, I drove there like this before. No escorts are required at 105 feet long. So just at these 3, actually Nova Scotia, it's even worse than Quebec. They don't like, Jeeps. They don't like boosters. It's a special application, has to go to their transportation committee or whatever for review, And I was driving and looking at trucks on the other side. Almost none of the trucks were 4-axle trucks. I think I saw 1 truck with a lift axle. For some reason, that makes it hard to get permits when you have a lift axle or you have a Jeep, and especially if you have a booster. They don't like it over here. Like, how do you move heavy stuff? I don't know. Well, that little yellow truck showed up, and the operator seat swivels. She was going backwards, facing back, and she has 2 axles on the truck. But they probably have like a solid axle on the back there. 2 axles, or I think each axle has probably 8 wheels, and they're all like solid axle. So that's my piece going over there. So basically, the boss came over in the pickup truck, and he says, "You gotta tell me which way you want the thing, which way you want it facing." And I said, "I have no idea. Which side is prettier?" And he says, well, joking aside, he says, one side is probably heavier because it has a drive motor, and it's where those cables are, that yellow cover. I thought it was just covering the cables. No, it's he showed me there's a massive wheel in there. There's actually an electric engine in there. And I said, okay. I said, I guess because I have 5 axles on the front, 4 in the back, and the rule is, like when you're 9-axle, so you have more axles in the front, so you put more weight towards the front. Oh, and they're coming right next to me. I hope they're not gonna hit my trailer. So anyway, we figured out that that thing is heavier, and the heavy part has to go on my trailer towards the truck, because the rear will be sitting in the air, right? And that's what goes into the thinking process, because the rear will be sticking in the air. So I don't want that part to be too heavy, because it can shift, right? So I want the heavy part as low as possible, because that's much safer than having it, like 6 feet up, right? So something heavy you put low, right? That's why you use low boy trailers, because it's safer than, let's say, loading on a flatbed, Oh boy, I feel super tired. But I already ate. I asked the security, where I can park, and they said park under the sign. And there's a building like there's a dark green 2-story building over there, where the cars parking begins. And the guy, he was showing to this side. He says, park under the sign. And I look, and yeah, there's a perfect spot here for a bobtail operator. And then he says, and I said, oh, okay, cool. I said, I'll go and grab something to eat. And he says, oh, somebody might snatch that place. He says, people park there overnight. See, like this guy over here, like there's another spot in here we can park. And well, we have a train moving over there. But mostly I see it's container traffic. Yeah, that train stopped. And you see all those containers in the distance, cranes. So I was right here, like this crane in there. Actually, no, it was that yellow one over there, and I couldn't. I see, you know, you're in Western Canada when you're in Canada because 3-axle trailers, right? And I could not film, of course, you know, loading, unloading, because it's you know, you're not supposed to film here, there. But when I was talking, I was inside the truck, so that's fine. But I couldn't show you guys the loading. But basically, what they did is exactly like the lady came with the truck. She spinned around the trailer with the truck, and then the crane lifted it, and he put it right next to, like, and he stood, because he can roll on those rails, right? And he stood right next to my truck. And then when he lifted it and he moved like sideways, and it was right over my trailer. And then they were communicating via radio, and this guy who was in charge, right, he says, okay, just go down slowly, gently. He said gently. And as soon as he did that, as soon as he said that, the whole 100,000-pound track, or 44.9 metric tons, snatched down, you know. But it was still like 1 meter, 3 feet in the air, but it was nowhere like, you know, we were expecting like this mode. Instead, it, you know. And I'm like, what the heck, what's going on? And the guy says, oh, it's a very old crane. And I said, no kidding. I saw the sign said 1990, right? So it's like 30 years old. So it cannot, I guess, because it did say, I remember. I think that's why. Remember, I was reading the labels on the crane. It said I think it said 45 tons or something, and this track was 44.9. So that's why I think these guys, they don't want to use the big crane, the really big one, because they were busy unloading the ship. But yeah, that crane was a bit scary. But yeah, everything worked fine. I was afraid that the rear will be hitting my booster airbags. No, I put some timbers in there. It went in the sky, you know, not too bad. But yeah, the front, I'm glad I told them to turn the unit around, because yeah, the front was heavier. Like when they lifted it, and they used 2 connections on each side and the same spots, the whole track was like this, you know. And so this heavy part they put in front. Well, I'm not sure why I'm showing there, but I don't have a trailer. So they put it the heavier part forward, right? Because I have more axles in the front. Like I have, what, 6 axles, right? 4 plus 2, whereas in the back I only have 4. And so I dropped the trailer. I got okay from the dispatcher. I said, yeah, I cannot sit inside the port, right? But I know they will allow me to drop the trailer. And the guy says, yeah, you're not in the way here. So I just left it right there. I didn't even move it. After they loaded, I put a bunch of chains on it and just dropped the Jeep, the trailer on the ground. and went and found a grocery store, got some food. The only thing is I forgot to get I have water, but I don't have any. I feel like Pepsi or Coke or something like that, something with a bit of a kick, something like a bit of a caffeine, because I'm falling asleep, because I got up so early today. But it's only like, I cannot believe this, it's only 2:34 standard time, I mean Eastern time, and here it's 3:34, right? And so yeah, this very nice shopping area, I don't know, like 5 minutes away here. And but I might need to walk. I see there's a Subway, like a sandwich store on the corner there. But this place is crazy. There's like 20 highways converging. I don't see any, like, how do you even cross the street over there? I'm not sure, but we'll figure something out. And so, I contacted the French permit company in Quebec, right? Because I'll be going through Quebec, and they said it can take anywhere from 1 day to 10 days. Oh boy. And like I don't know if I mentioned this, but I didn't realize that I need escorts in these 3 jurisdictions: Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Quebec. But it's okay, the rate is good, but I am paying for all expenses out of my own pocket, for permits, for escorts, right? It's all included in the price. That's how freight brokers like it. They like to get, when you give them a quote, they like to have an all-inclusive rate, and that's what I give them. So of course, you just do approximate, use approximate figure for permits. Oh, sorry. But the good thing is that I'm all done for today, so no way permits will be issued today, so I can relax, maybe watch a movie or something. Now I'm on season 3 of Stranger Things on Netflix. Gotta finish that one. And I don't know, if I'm lucky, maybe tomorrow I'll get a permit, because this guy from the permit company says, yeah, recently he saw a permit came back in 1 day for the same configuration, Jeep and Booster, but for some reason they don't like him over here. I don't know, how are you supposed to move a big load? So that's what's going on. So here's some photos. Sorry I didn't show you guys the loaded trailer, but I'll do another video where I'll show you how the chains are connected. But actually over here you will see how they are connected, because these photos were requested by the freight broker, because they wanted to make sure that I hooked up properly, and not gonna damage this super expensive track. And I kind of like calmed them down. I said, the representative from the owner of the company who owns this crane, he was there supervising, and he okayed all the connections where I was hooking up chains. And actually, yeah, it was pretty good. Like at one spot he says, oh, I'm not sure about this, how about we move the chain slightly over here? And I said, okay, let's do that. And so there was only one spot where he kind of like had a problem. I was just putting the chain through, just getting ready to put a binder on it, and that's when, so I didn't have to undo anything. I just moved the chain like a couple of feet to the side of the track, and this way it was away from that part that he did not want me to touch on the track. And so that's helpful. I always ask people, but this guy, and he's the crane operator, and they sent him down here to kind of like assist and supervise loading and unloading. So that's, you know, that's helpful. So anyway, so that's it. So that's day one of this trip. I hope permits don't take till Christmas next year. So if permits are issued, we'll be out of here in a jiffy. But the next step after getting permits will be getting escorts, because I'm pretty sure I will need at least one from here to Quebec, and I think Nova Scotia might even ask for two, because I'm 105 feet long. But this company I'm dealing with for permits, they also have their own escort cars, and so this would not necessarily be cheaper than using, you know, somebody else, but it's convenient to have everything, you know, in one spot, so it's easier to organize. So thanks for watching. Take care.